Giving feedback, it's one of the hardest things we have to do, right? You're just trying to be helpful, but then, bam, the other person gets super defensive. But what if I told you the secret to giving great feedback comes from a legendary pilot and a complete and total disaster? Let's get into it. So, our story starts with a huge mistake, a really high-stakes situation, and a reaction that, honestly, is going to blow your mind.
But first, a quick question for you, and I want you to be really honest with yourself. Imagine somebody at work makes a massive $1 million mistake, a truly awful error. What's your first gut reaction? What do you really want to do in that moment?
Okay, so picture this. It's the 1940s. We're at this big, bustling air show, and the star of the show is a famous test pilot, a guy named Bob Hoover.
Hoover is about to take up this incredible, priceless plane from World War II. We're talking a one-of-a-kind, irreplaceable piece of history. This thing was his pride and joy.
So right before the flight, a young mechanic is getting the plane ready, and he makes a critical, catastrophic mistake. He fills the tank with the wrong type of fuel. It's a propeller plane, so it needs gasoline, but he filled it with jet fuel.
And yeah, the result is exactly what you'd fear. The plane gets about 300 feet in the air, and both engines just sputter and die. Now, Hoover was a phenomenal pilot, so he actually manages to crash land it without getting killed. But the plane? Oh, it's completely destroyed. A total wreck. You can just imagine the mechanic, right? He is just horrified. He sees the wreckage, runs out onto the field, and just starts sobbing. He's thinking, that's it, I'm fired. My career is over before it's even begun. He is expecting to be absolutely humiliated.
But then Hoover walks over to this devastated young man, puts an arm around him, and says something truly unbelievable. He says, "To show you I'm sure that you'll never do this again, I want you to service my plane tomorrow." I mean, wow. Just think about that for a second. What an incredible response.
So why? Why would he do that? Why show trust instead of, just pure rage? Well, it turns out there's some really powerful psychology behind Hoover's instinct.
Believe it or not, what Hoover did totally lines up with research from the famous psychologist B.F. Skinner. See, Skinner found that animals, and hey, we're animals, right? They learn way faster and remember things better when you reward them for good behavior. Punishment, all that does is create fear and resentment. But rewards create a positive vibe, a genuine desire to do the right thing again.
And this just lays it out so clearly. Punishment builds resentment. It makes people defensive. And you know what? The second you're not looking over their shoulder, that old behavior, it's probably coming right back. A reward, on the other hand, or in Hoover's case, trust, that builds real, actual motivation. And that's what creates change that actually sticks.
So here's the bottom line, the big takeaway from the science. Criticizing people almost never leads to lasting change. All it does is put them on the defensive. Their walls go up and they completely stop listening to you. Now, this whole idea that criticism just makes people defensive, it kind of flies right in the face of a super common feedback technique that I bet we've all been taught to use or had used on us.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's the old classic, the feedback sandwich. You've probably been on the receiving end of one of these. You know the formula. Start with something nice, like, you did a great job on that presentation. Then you drop the criticism, usually right after that big old but. And then you try to soften the blow with more praise at the end. Okay, so here's why this method is actually terrible. That tiny little word, but, it works like a giant verbal eraser. All that nice praise you started with, poof, it's gone. It doesn't count anymore.
The second a person hears, "You did a great job, but," their brain just throws out the compliment and braces for impact. They're just waiting for the criticism to hit. The praise feels totally fake, and the whole method just completely backfires. All right, so if the feedback sandwich is a no-go, then what are we supposed to do? Well, this brings us right back to the Hoover method. And the fix is surprisingly simple. You just replace one word. Instead of but, you use and. Think about it. The first way creates a conflict, but the second way, their report was excellent, and I'm confident we can hit the deadline next time. See, that's not a fight, that's a partnership. It's about solving a problem together.
So let's just boil this down into two simple, powerful techniques you can use right away. First, like we just said, swap but for and to connect praise to a solution for the future. And second, and this one is a real game changer, try talking about one of your own mistakes first. It instantly creates empathy and shows you're not there to judge them, you're there to help.
Okay, let's bring this all together. If you remember only one single thing from this entire explainer, I want it to be this.
Building someone up is always the best way to correct behavior. Bob Hoover knew that mechanic already felt absolutely terrible. Yelling at him wouldn't have taught him a thing, but showing him trust, that ensured he would become the most careful, conscientious mechanic on that entire airfield.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Look, anybody can criticize. It's easy, but it almost never leads to real improvement. Building someone's confidence, though, now that takes skill. And that's what creates change that actually lasts. So the only question left is, whose confidence are you going to build tomorrow?